Harry's Wife, part 100.35. Much more to say. But has she? Hello, I'm HG Tudor. Harry's wife has recently alluded to the fact that she has a voice and she intends to use it, that she has a lot more to say. You might recall, many moons ago, that one member of her coterie talked about how Harry's wife had the receipts, i.e. documents to support certain things that she was asserting. Now, it perhaps may have escaped my attention. After all, I have other things that I focus on. But to the best of my recollection, I don't recall any of these supposed receipts ever turning up. Do you? And with Harry's wife saying, "Oh, there's a lot more that I can say," what is this? Well, it is, of course, a threat. Harry's wife loves threats. Why? Because she's a mid-range narcissist. I'll be explaining more of that in a few moments. Is there much more that she can say? Well, first of all, one would think that if she had material that she could utilize, we'd already have heard it. Why? She's a mid-range narcissist, and therefore, if there was something really meaty that was available to her, I suspect it would have been already put out there, because her narcissism, itching and twitching, couldn't resist doing so in order to have the maximum impact. We've seen, of course, the bombshell interview, which contained, basically, a lot of rubbish, lies, frippery, made-up events. The problem that Harry's wife has is that it's actually her, as I've explained in my earlier video, Harry's Wife, part 100.29, the media is waiting to expose her, on which people have the receipts. Tom Bower being an excellent example of that, and Her Majesty as well. But as you know, expertly advised, Her Majesty is playing the long game in all of this, not playing the cards unless she has to, feeding out the rope, allowing the narcissist to talk herself into that pit. Accordingly, if there were major revelations that Harry's wife could utilize, undoubtedly they will have been exposed so far. The fact is, like the cowardly mid-ranger she is, it's all about, I know something you don't know. I'm going to expose you. I've got further things that I could say. Now, undoubtedly, there will be incidents involving the royal family because, of course, there are other individuals within that family that have got their own skeletons in their closet. They're not all entirely blameless. But what they don't do is go around behaving in the way that Harry's wife does. Hence, she's the one that gets herself put under the Tudor so regularly. She believes she's much more to say because her narcissism convinces her of that. But if you were to take her to one side as a, say, trusted advisor and confidant, and say to her, "Okay, Harry's wife, there's nobody here but you and I. We need to do a little bit of strategizing, a little bit of battle planning. Give me the list of the things you've got on them so I can make a note of this and make a determination as to how good and useful these things are and when strategically we should roll them out. I have your very best interests at heart here." In all likelihood, you would either be met with prevarication, "We don't need to do that right now," vagueness, "Well, there's this and this and this, but I'd rather, just keep it to myself and not use it. After all, I hugely respect the Queen." And you'd actually find that she isn't able to give you tangible, evidence-based, particularized examples of the material that she supposedly has. Why? Because it doesn't exist. She will believe that there's much that she can say because her narcissism convinces her of that. And if at the appropriate time her narcissism determines you need to say something now, she will. But as we've seen, it'll either be one of the hand grenades, a lie, a revision of history, a half-truth, basically a load of bunkum that's invented by her narcissism for the purposes of trying to maintain that something awful has happened to her when actually it didn't. And instead, commensurate with her status as a mid-range narcissist, she will make repeated reference to "there's much more that I could say," with the expectation that this has the royal family going, oh shit, what's she going to say about us? Charles thinking, did she look through the window when Camilla was wielding the strap on? Edward thinking, damn, has she seen me dressing up as a woman again? Holy Toledo, what am I going to do about that? The fact is, she invariably doesn't have this material, but her narcissism convinces her that she's got things on the royal family, and therefore utilises this by way of threat. Mid-rangers love threats. Why? They're so fucking easy to use. If you don't, I will do this. Sometimes they are based on things. For instance, you might have foolishly sent some spicy pictures to the narcissist, not realizing what you're dealing with, and they threaten to expose and release them online. If you want to understand more about how you deal with that, I have a specific assistance package which is contained within the Knowledge Vault, dealing with the question of the narcissist threatening to release sensitive material online. Listen into that. Very useful. But often the narcissist doesn't have anything, and it's a combination of vagueness, amorphousness, and the threat. I'm going to tell everybody about what you've been up to. You're left thinking, I don't know what I've been doing. What do you mean? Sometimes the threat is specific, sometimes it's vague, but invariably it's all about the threat. And mid-rangers love threats. First of all, they're very easy to use. It's a spoken word, and as you know from my other videos, narcissists relish using the spoken word rather than actually doing things, because the narcissism likes to operate in an economy setting. Secondly, where a threat is spoken of, it has plausible deniability. So that if a complaint is made, I didn't say that, officer, she misheard, or he's got it wrong, what I actually meant was this, and it creates doubt of sufficient depth, which would invariably mean that a criminal prosecution would get nowhere. The power of a threat, of course, is not in its execution. Sure, having the pictures of you posing naked strewn over the internet isn't pleasant for you. But once it's done, and the power contained in them has been lost. The narcissism much rather have the threat hanging over you like a sword of Damocles. That way you become easier to control. You're more likely to be compliant. The threat, the worry that the narcissist is going to release those pictures, tell everybody about your predilection for being smeared in peanut butter and having dogs lick you, or whatever it might be. Also, remember, mid-range narcissists operate facades, and that facade management button is invariably pressed and flashing to avoid the narcissist going down a route which would cause problems with the facade, which means issue the threat but don't use it, because using it or executing it could lead to damage to the facade as a consequence of criminal investigation, other people expressing disapproval for such conduct, and so forth. And therefore, ultimately, although there are some mid-range narcissists that do act on their threats, most don't. They're inherently cowards. Their narcissism wants them to operate in an economy setting. They'll use the plausible deniability. If you say it, but then do it, the commission and execution creates more evidence, and therefore it's better to stay within the refuge of uncertainty through just something that was stated. The power of the threat lies in it hanging over the victim rather than it being executed. And Harry's wife, as a mid-range narcissist, operates in a similar way. Her narcissism, in order to assert control and draw fuel over people, immediately causes her to issue the rather cryptic comments about, and there's a lot more that I can tell. There's my story which has not yet come out. In due course they'll hear my truth. There'll be plenty of chapters about what I have to say. I may speak out if I am forced to. And of course, much of this is just blustering threat. And if she does act on the threats, invariably, as we've seen, it's based upon things that didn't happen. Of course, this may not be particular comfort for those that are affected by it, but by applying logic and understanding the way that a narcissist uses threats, they should recognize that when she talks about the fact that she's got so much to say, this is a threat, and while she believes that she has so much to say, when it comes to the point of doing it, it may not occur, or if she does, as we've seen in the past, it just becomes all the more ridiculous and is evidently made up. It's important to understand how Harry's wife utilizes threat in this way. It causes people to be uncertain, questioning themselves. It affects the paranoia of those who are imbued with that. It allows her to assert control over those that are the subject of the threat, whilst, of course, all of those reporting on it are chattering away, commenting upon it, dissecting it, wondering what it is, which, of course, garners control over them and, of course, the all-important fuel. Her narcissism will do this regularly because it's hugely effective. But it's very useful for you to understand why she does it, how she does it, and more importantly, how it can be seen through, and the risk associated with it actually being executed. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.